Hi, we're Julie Song and Gina Kim. Now today we'd like to talk about the literary masterpiece Great Gatsby, which includes a huge range of topics and themes from wealth, hope, and a step-by-step guide on how to make it blatantly obvious that you're cheating on your spouse.
This book is considered a masterpiece for a reason because there's a fine line between stereotypically supernatural love books like Twilight and complex and elaborately planned out literary works like The Great Gatsby.
Likewise, it contains a huge spectrum of emotions, which starts with simple, everyday sentiments of anger, affection, and sadness, to slightly more mature ones like, say, anger,
From realizing your spouse was cheating on you,
affection,
for another man who is not your spouse,
and sadness.
for comprehending that your dream girl will not readily refuse to throw away her spouse. So today we'll be introducing two songs that will match with two specific scenes in the book. These will be Adele's Hello and Leona Lewis's Bleeding Love. First and foremost, it would be an understatement to say that Gatsby was sad about Daisy, because he was absolutely heartbroken. Heck, he even despised her child. The mood of this song is melancholy and nostalgic, and thus fits perfectly with the scene, because after all, he is thinking of his beautiful, idealized past in the midst of a disappointing present.
Hello, it's me. I was wondering if after all these years you'd like to meet to go over everything.
This situation directly correlates with Daisy and Gatsby's reunion in Nick's house, wherein they are seen sitting at either end of the couch, looking at each other as if some question had been asked or was in the air, and every vestige of embarrassment was gone. After attending Oxford for 6 months and fighting in a war which would indeed seem like all these years to Gatsby, he would finally get to reunite with his past love and go over everything, right? Wrong. Because, hurrah, hurrah, Daisy already got married, which gives somewhat a bitter sweetness to the lyrics.
They say that time's supposed to heal you, but I ain't done much healing. Hello.
Now, time is one of the major themes of this book, and instead of having a cathartic effect, time instead took away from the love there was between Gatsby and Daisy before he was enlisted in the army. Thus, afterwards, Gatsby cannot help but want to relive the past and somehow save their relationship. His desperation and desire is what motivates him to reply, "Can't repeat the past? Why, of course you can," when Nick argues that he cannot turn back time. When remembering the past, people often have the tendency to look over the negative aspects of the memory, and Gatsby is doing the same, over-idealizing the past with Daisy and making it his ultimate goal.
In California, dreaming about who we used to be when we were younger and free.
Gatsby continues about his nostalgic musings in the next verse. Although Gatsby wasn't really in California, he was in the military during World War I, all the while thinking of Daisy. In fact, being away from Daisy hurt so much that he tried very hard to die during the actual war. To make matters worse, he was even sent to Oxford, an unexpected and unfortunate event for Gatsby. And as much of a retrospective person Gatsby is, he would have undoubtedly thought of what he and Daisy used to be. In the words "younger and free," readers can imply that it is referring to the time Gatsby and Daisy were truly in love and when Daisy was less driven to marry in accordance to material wealth, since Gatsby, then under the name of J. Gats, was a relatively poor lieutenant. His lowly financial status is further accentuated in Chapter 8. As a matter of fact, he had no such facilities, he had no comfortable family standing behind him, and he was liable at the whim of an impersonal government to be blown anywhere about the world. Nonetheless, the two were infatuated with each other, which shows that when they were young, free, and somewhat reckless, money was not a top priority, which allowed them to love each other without hesitation.
There's such a difference between us and a million.
Here, the differences as mentioned becomes blatant when Gatsby returns, since he's suddenly slapped in the face with reality. In fact, by the time Gatsby returned, Daisy had already had her first child with Tom, which clearly disturbed Gatsby when he met her. Afterward, he kept looking at the child with surprise. I don't think he ever really believed in its existence before. The child represents the past Daisy shares with Tom, as well as a link that cannot be severed between them.
The spotlight is going to fall on our poor man Wilson. Leona Lewis's Bleeding Love is a twisted song because it's essentially about being dangerously in love.
With such a convoluted theme, it's hard to pinpoint its specific mood, but we could generally say it's ambivalent, confused, and infatuated in the worst way possible. Likewise, Wilson, a humble and hardworking man who never cheated on his wife Myrtle, meets the worst fate possible and ends up with his heart and deed, both literally and figuratively, bleeding love.
Closed off from love, I didn't need the pain.
Our first lyrics that we'll go over comes from the very first verse, which shows the pain Wilson goes through after he is able to confirm of Myrtle's affair. Nick does not see Wilson's direct reaction to the affair, but instead overhears him explaining that, "I've got my wife locked up in there." The lyrics suggest a character that is feeling very hurt due to lack of love, and in Wilson's case, it is betrayal. Insecure of Myrtle's love and loyalty towards him, he plans their move to the west faster.
Everyone's looking round, thinking I'm going crazy.
The first part shows the newspapers and such spreading the gossip, and thinking and going crazy relates to how the murder is dismissed. "It was a madman," he said. "He must have been mad." In a way, it highlights how Wilson's love for Myrtle led to these tragedies.
But I don't care what they say, I'm in love with you. It's
Due to Wilson's eagerness to please Myrtle, he is willing to break the facade of a typical dominant male and do whatever he wants. When Tom visits their shop and Myrtle asks him to bring some chairs, Wilson replies obsequiously with, "Oh sure," and hurries towards the little office, mingling immediately with the cement color of the walls. We can see that although Tom, a wealthy upper-class male, is right in their presence, he does not hesitate to submit to Myrtle's wishes. In the lyrics, "But I don't care what they say, I'm in love with you," the character gives off the similar, desperate desire to make her partner happy, wholly motivated by love.
keep bleeding, keep bleeding love. I keep bleeding, I keep bleeding love.
In the next chorus part, we can take into account the literal references it may be making with the book. The main topic of the song was bleeding love, and this accurately describes the end of the Wilson couple. Eventually, both end up lying dead in a pool of their own blood. For example, take Myrtle Wilson, her life violently extinguished, knelt in the road, and mingled her thick, dark blood with the dust. This describes not only the way Myrtle died, but also the irony behind her death. Myrtle was killed by the person that she was willing to put behind her entire marriage for, and so the bleeding love suggests how both Wilsons eventually suffer the consequences of Myrtle's affair. Finally, their bleeding love is topped off with Gatsby's death and Wilson's suicide, thus completing the Holocaust and the twisted love triangle or pentagon that was never meant to last.
Keep bleeding, keep bleeding love.
We hope that this video taught you how these two songs relate to the book The Great Gatsby.
This was our analysis, and we say goodbye, old sport.